Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell in for Alexis Del Cid, and welcome back to All Things Heart. Today, we wanted to share the story of a man who needed a quintuple bypass, but the doctor involved in that story was needed in the operating room for a heart transplant. So instead, we are happy to bring you one of our favorite episodes from this past September. It's about the importance of trusting your gut and why speed makes all the difference for stroke patients. So please enjoy this encore presentation of All Things Heart.
Clear memory was waking up in a hospital room.
Coming up today on All Things Heart, trusting your gut, the warning signs that led to a life-saving 911 call from hundreds of miles away.
From the University of Kansas Health System.
I am amazed. The team here is great.
I came on a Tuesday, and then by Saturday, I had a heart in me.
I have never seen a group of people work together so good as this team of heart specialists. I mean, it's just unreal.
Stand by to set up show.
And the Dolph C. Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio.
Roll it.
Always makes you feel like you're the most important patient on the planet.
I felt heard, and that was really big.
This is All Things Heart.
I'm Alexis Del Cid. Welcome back to All Things Heart. We are thrilled to be back with you. Every Thursday at 10 a.m., we're going to give you direct access to our doctors so you can ask your questions to them. Coming up today, you're going to meet a man whose business trip was anything but typical. The warning signs his wife recognized over the phone moments before he collapsed. Plus, our doctors do incredible work here at the health system. But have you ever wondered how they unwind? We've got the buzz that will help start your morning on a high note. We go behind the mask. You're going to have to wait for answers to the questions you have about those two images there. And of course, we want to get your heart questions answered. So be sure to send them to us on YouTube, Facebook at All Things Heart. You will find the links right here on your screen. Just go to the University of Kansas Health System Facebook page or YouTube. We love your questions, and we always want to answer every single one of them. So now imagine this. You're on the phone with your spouse. They're out of town. And you notice something is very wrong with the way they're speaking. What do? Tammy Batson didn't hesitate to take action.
When Greg Batson and his wife Tammy first met back in 1999, they had no idea it was going to be the beginning of a lifelong romance.
We met when I was a police officer and she was a dispatcher.
After decades of marriage, as Tammy likes to say, she's always in his ear, often literally as they chat through his Bluetooth. But on a cold December night in 2019, Tammy didn't like what she heard. Greg was on a business trip in Kansas City. Tammy was home with their daughter in Orongo outside of Webb City.
She said, you don't sound right, and she's saying something's going on. She kept on saying you're slurring your words.
He remembers he was carrying a Gatorade bottle and it was snowing.
The bottle kept slipping out of my hand. I thought it was just cold because it was snowy outside, and I kept on picking it up and slipped out of my left hand again. And, she couldn't understand what I was saying. I thought I was saying everything perfect.
15 years of working as a 911 dispatcher kicked in. Tammy knew in her gut her husband was having a stroke. She called for her daughter, who pulled up the Life 360 app they had on their cell phones.
So she did that, pinpointed what intersection I was at through Life 360, and then got the fire department down there.
What Tammy and her daughter couldn't know was that in those final moments, Greg had collapsed into a snowbank.
I remember getting into the back of the ambulance, and that was it.
So jarring. We're joined by Dr. Mark Wiley, who is the chair of the Department of Cardiovascular Medicine here at the University of Kansas Health System. So great to have you on our premiere. And we are also joined with neurointerventional surgeon, Dr. Michael Abraham. So Dr. Michael Abraham, get this, he's the one who navigated the catheter through Greg's groin all the way up into his brain and then used that to suck the clot out in a single pass. It's incredible. And the good news is our patient Greg is doing well. He's back at work today, in fact. We do have his wife Tammy with us virtually, though. Tammy, thank you so much for joining us. First thing I want to ask you is, how soon was Greg able to go back to work after this happened?
He was off work for about 2 weeks after it happened. He was out of the hospital less than 48 hours later.
So the last thing he remembers was getting in the ambulance, and then he wound up here at the University of Kansas Health System. So you knew just by hearing your husband talk something was wrong. You used to be a dispatcher. So Tammy, had you gotten calls as a dispatcher from other people having strokes that led you to know the signs when you heard your husband's voice?
I had taken calls not specifically from other patients that were in the progress of having a stroke, but from caregivers that might be on scene who suspected that the individual might be having a stroke.
So Dr. Abraham, Greg was having an ischemic stroke.
Correct.
What's an ischemic stroke?
So an ischemic stroke is where you have a blockage in an artery going to the brain. So it's cutting off the blood flow to a specific area of the brain, so there's no oxygen, no nutrients going to that brain, and the brain takes about 20% of the heart's output. So it has a very little reserve for getting little flow. So stroke symptoms can start right away when blood flow is cut off.
When we were talking and you talked about how you put that catheter into his groin and it went all the way up into his brain. We do have an illustration that you sent to that.
Yes.
You sent us a YouTube video, so I want to play that while we're talking about that. Is this a typical way to remove a clot during an ischemic stroke?
Yes, it's very common to take this catheter. It's called an aspiration catheter. Again, from the groin all the way around the heart to whichever side, back or front, left or right of the brain where the blockage is. And as the name implies, we aspirate or suck out the clot and pull it all the way out.
So this is where I want to bring Dr. Wiley in. So the catheter travels through the groin, through the heart, into the brain. Is that correct?
Well, it does.
Quite a
It
journey.
bypasses. Yeah, so it'll bypass the heart up to the brain, and typically he'll access the arteries that supply the brain directly.
And is there a risk to the heart when this kind of procedure is happening?
With this procedure in particular, the heart is protected. It's safe. Yep.
You guys brought some show and tell. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Abraham, what do you have there?
So I brought, this is not the one I took in Greg's brain, but the same model called the Red 62. This is a catheter that, again, go from the groin and into the right or left side of his brain. And it's large enough where we hook this up to an aspiration tank that sits at the foot of Greg's bed, and it provides a continuous suction force while we're literally pulling it out.
What's the cord or the catheter made out of?
There is a special metal called nitinol, which is a nickel titanium alloy that helps make up some of the structure of it. But then there's several layers that you can't truly appreciate seeing here that go into the making of the catheter that make it very soft and durable as well, because it has to be able to withstand going through all these turns into the brain without kinking or breaking.
So how does it, this is really a layperson's question, but I'm not a doctor. Where does it go? It goes to, bypasses the heart. So what's it traveling up into to get into the brain?
So we're going through the aorta, which is the largest artery in the body. So it goes, the heart sits here and the aorta comes out. So we're going through the aorta, and Dr. Wiley said we don't go down into the heart, we're bypassing it. So from the aorta, we direct it into whichever artery is a problem.
And how long does that take about, this procedure like this?
Typically, in most circumstances, I would expect probably about a half hour to an hour. Depends on the complexity.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and some patients, if their aorta is very tortuous or windy, that can add time to the procedure. So that may take a little bit longer. But in Greg's case, he's a very young guy. His anatomy is very straightforward, so we're able to get into his brain, within a matter of minutes.
We have some viewer questions, and I want to get to those. Remember, if you have a question, and we know a lot of you get questions throughout the program, send them to us. You can send them on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching, and we will ask your questions live. And we also get them via email. So we have a question from June that's for Tammy. June wants to know, did Greg have any heart or other health issues before he had a stroke?
He did. He had been diagnosed with left heart failure. He had a left bundle branch blockage. So he had also had an aortic valve replacement and a pacemaker, and eventually had a defibrillator placed.
So how soon was the stroke that he had after all those things had happened and he traveled that journey?
It was about a year after he was diagnosed.
Wow, that must have been so scary to be on the phone with him. I have a question for Dr. Wiley. This is from Denise. Denise wants to know if there are heart conditions that predispose you to having an ischemic stroke.
Yeah, that's a good question. The most common heart issue is something called atrial fibrillation, which is it's an irregular heart rhythm that predisposes you to having a stroke. And that's, we see that pretty commonly in patients who are more senior, so 50s and up, but it can be really any age. It's one of the reasons we use a blood thinner in that heart rhythm issue, but I would say that's probably the most common cardiac issue.
And so if someone watching has AFib, that's something that I've heard quite a lot throughout working here just in the past year. What do you tell them if they have AFib? Because that would be terrifying to think you're at risk of having a clot in your brain.
Yeah, so there are ways to manage it. So we have some physicians in cardiology that specialize in atrial fibrillation. Patients who are on a blood thinner and they're tolerating a blood thinner, their risk of having a stroke is just like yours and mine.
Right.
So really it's making sure you're managing it and staying on top of it. Some patients aren't candidates for blood thinners, and there are other procedures that we can do to mitigate the risk of a stroke, but it's definitely manageable. It's nothing to be scared of. You just have to be in the right hands.
Right, which is, thank God for the doctors here, that we're able to get to Greg quickly, and part of that has to do with how quickly Tammy acted, and we're going to get to that in a minute, but Tammy, I have another question from Gretchen. Gretchen wrote to me, and she wrote, Tammy must have been so worried. How long after Greg collapsed did she wait to get that next call from him? I mean, you're on the phone and he collapses.
Yeah, so it wasn't until about an hour and a half later, me and my daughter were actually traveling from home to Kansas City. We're about 2.5 hours away. And I had already received a call from his doctor telling me that they had confirmed that it was a stroke and they were taking him into intervention radiology to remove it. And while we were on the road to Kansas City, my phone rang and it was coming from Greg's cell phone, and it kind of scared me at first because I was not expecting him to call me. And when I answered the phone, I was like, hello, and he was like, hey, what you doing?
Oh my gosh.
It was just perfectly clear, like,
Did he remember how he left you? Did he remember when he was talking to you?
He remembered the initial phone conversation. There's bits and pieces that he doesn't remember. He remembers getting into the ambulance, and he remembers waking up in a hospital room.
So how long would you say it was then between the phone going dead and him calling you and saying, hey, what's up?
It was about an hour and a half.
That sounds really quick. All things considered, what we've been talking about, is that typical, Dr. Abraham?
Yes, whenever we hear about a stroke, we have to move very fast because every minute during a stroke, 2 million brain cells are dying. Wow. And that can have a big impact when you add up, several minutes. And our stroke team is very well versed, and if they hear about an ischemic stroke, they'll let my partners and myself know, and then we'll move quickly. We have 30 minutes to get into the hospital when we know a stroke is coming.
And Tammy knew what to do. She worked as a dispatcher. Tammy, you were able to somehow know the right things to say, so you were able to call 911 here in Kansas City from long distance. How did that work?
So I was on the phone with Greg, and our daughter Hannah had her phone, and after she had pinpointed on Life 360 where he was at, he was trying to tell me where he was at, and I could understand Washington. I could not understand 12th Street, though. So whenever she pulled it up and finally got him pinpointed, she called 911, which took us to our local 911. And the dispatcher that happened to answer was a very good friend of mine. She got all of the initial information, and she actually contacted the 911 center in Kansas City and got us connected.
Wow. And you were able to give her all the right information from what you'd heard. That must be a great skill to have. That probably saved precious moments, Dr. Wiley.
Yeah. Oh, I would expect it probably did. It's important, I think, if you are having symptoms, to call 911 as quick as you can. And I think some folks just think it's something that's just going to come and go, but if you're experiencing anything that seems like that, you need to be quick on it.
There was just a news report about a news anchor, I believe it was Oklahoma, who was anchoring the news and started to have a stroke. and her coworkers recognized it. So she tossed it to the weather anchor. They got her to the hospital, and that's saved time. And this brings me to this question from Glenn. Glenn emailed. He wants to know if there are, this is a question for both doctors, so he wants to know if you're in a similar situation as Tammy or you're having a medical emergency, are there specific phrases that we should use as just regular people calling that will get us the quickest care or to the right place? Are there phrases we should know to say that will help the EMTs who arrive? Dr. Wiley or Dr. Abraham, who wants to go first?
Yeah. One of the most common acronyms we use is FAST, which stands for face, arm, speech, and time. So if you notice someone with you has, one-sided arm and leg weakness, is clumsy, can't move it at all, and then if their face is also droopy on one side, and then their speech may be slurred, or they can't speak, or they can't comprehend, those are very important pieces of information to convey to EMS. And then the time, when those symptoms start, is very important because that plays a role in when we can give certain medications such as TPA, which is a clot buster, and the first line of treatment for ischemic strokes.
Do you get that same question, Dr. Wiley, of like, what do I tell dispatchers when they answer the phone? Because I imagine they hear a lot of screaming all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, anything that you feel like is a deficit from your baseline, really, for the most part, and that's the acronym's probably the best way to remember.
I want to put up that acronym again because that's such a good way to teach you if you know the signs of a stroke, like Greg's wife did, and this likely saved his life. So again, you just remember FAST. F is for face drooping, if your face is drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. Are you having trouble talking? Is a person near you having trouble talking? And then T, time to call 911 immediately. I do have another question that came in from another person named Tammy. This is for Tammy. We always hear about women's intuition. You knew something was wrong. So did you have an intuition, and what was it? What did it feel like in your gut?
When I was first talking to him, I mean, the conversation was normal, and it all happened within just a split second. He went from sounding completely normal to not being able to understand him at all. And because I knew he had the heart condition, and he just wasn't responding right, I was extremely frightened in that initial moment. But I knew that I had to maintain some sort of calm so that we could get him help. So that, in that aspect, my dispatch training kind of took over, even though it was for my husband, it was for my loved one. And I knew pretty certain that he was having a stroke, just based on how quickly things changed. And he went from being so clear to sounding like, he was very intoxicated to the point I couldn't understand a word he was saying.
I have a question from Yen Liang, one of our viewers who's watching from Taiwan. I love this. I love doing programs like this because we go everywhere. Yen would like to know, would high blood pressure caused by high diastolic blood pressure lead to a stroke? Dr. Wiley.
It can, but it's a different type of stroke than what we're talking about today. So there's an ischemic stroke, which we talked about at the beginning, which is a blockage to the blood flow.
Right.
If your blood pressure is running high, that can cause a different type of stroke, which is associated with bleeding. So, high blood pressure is an important thing to manage as well. But it's a different type of stroke, and the treatment would be a little bit different.
And what would that stroke be called? Is it a
hemorrhagic stroke?
A hemorrhagic stroke. So ischemic is in the brain.
Yeah.
And
correct.
Hemorrhagic would be elsewhere.
Still be in the brain.
Still be in the brain, but just a different kind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Question from Lisa. Oh, this is just a clarification. She wants to know again the app that your family uses. I know it because I use that app, Life 360.
Yeah, Life 360, and we just use the free version, and
so
it worked.
And we're not affiliated with Life 360 in any way. It's just if you're a worried parent, it's a great thing. Do you guys have it for your kids too?
Oh, it's a great way to track your kids.
Right? You can see how fast they're driving. You can see where they are.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
How they're traveling. I knew my son was in a golf cart with someone because it was going slowly around a park, and I didn't know. I knew he wasn't jogging. Terry has one more question. Terry would like to know if a weak heart can cause a stroke. Can a weak heart cause a stroke?
Yeah, sometimes if the heart is not pumping well enough or strong enough, that can also increase the risk of a blood clot forming in the heart, which can then travel up to the brain.
And does Greg have any limitations now, Tammy?
No.
So he's totally fine?
Yeah, he's totally fine. In fact, in April of 2021, he actually had a heart transplant.
Wow, I did not know that. That's amazing. And how's he doing then? He's doing great?
Yeah, he's doing great. He's a conductor for the railroad. Very physical. He has no limitations. He's living life like nothing's going to stop him.
Oh, that's what we like to hear. And he's such a young guy. A lot of people are asking, how do you know if you're at risk for a stroke? So here's a way we can help you find out. This is a great resource here at the University of Kansas Health System because there's a quiz you can take. We've posted the link right there on your screen. Go to kansashealthsystem.com/stroke quiz. You take the quiz and it pops right up. We'll tell you if you're at risk for a stroke. It's a great resource. So glad that Greg is doing well and he's got his new heart and that he fell into the care of Dr. Abraham and Dr. Wiley, the chair of cardiology. This is just incredible that Greg is doing well and it's thanks to Tammy's also quick thinking. So Tammy, I want to ask you, do you have any final thoughts for our viewers who are watching who might find themselves in a similar situation where they're on the phone with someone and something is wrong?
If you suspect that somebody is, having a stroke, especially on the phone, it can be extremely difficult because all you have is what you can hear. And if, like in my case, I knew that he just did not sound right. I knew my husband. Just remain calm, try to find out exactly where they're at, and call 911.
Dr. Abraham, what about you?
Yes, just like Tammy said, a stroke essentially starts with whoever is around that individual. And knowing that acronym FAST is very important because if you can remember that, then you can recognize stroke symptoms and then activate 911, stroke team, and ideally save someone like Greg.
Right, save his life.
Yeah.
Dr. Wiley, you must be pretty proud sitting here of all your colleagues and Dr. Abraham.
Oh, I feel very fortunate to be a part of the team, and these guys do incredible work, and it's just it's amazing to think about a patient like this who can have stroke symptoms, get to the hospital, get taken care of in kind of an orchestrated way, and so it's honestly amazing to think about, and it does make me proud to be a part of the team.
It's almost like magic, except you had to go to a lot of school to do this. There's nothing magic about it. This is just being smart and knowing exactly what to do. Which brings me to one of the great things about working here at the health system. It's getting to know our healthcare workers behind the mask. Like, what do they do outside the hospital walls when they're not saving lives? Take a look at this. Is that Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen? Nope, it's our very own Dr. Abraham. You're pretty good. How long have you been playing?
About 15 years. I started right at the end of med school.
Who's your sidekick?
That's my little guy, Isaiah. Yeah.
Are you teaching him? Does he play?
I'm teaching his older brother, ukulele, so.
Oh, ukulele?
Yeah.
How'd you pick that?
It's much smaller, easier for kids to handle. Strings are soft, so.
So you're musical.
I like to dabble.
That. Do you ever play live besides for Isaiah?
I have.
Like, can we go see you? Do you play live at bars and stuff? Or
nothing
clubs?
recent. I used to a lot in my younger days, and I used to be in a small band with some guys here from KU.
What was it called?
Vitamin Beat.
That's amazing. Yeah. Did that also pay tribute to your work as work with hearts, the Vitamin Beat?
I don't know how we came up with that, to be honest with you, but it just,
it's pretty bad.
Yeah. All right, thank you. I know. All right, so now we're going to get to Dr. Wiley. Dr. Wiley, we know protective gear is critical to being a doctor, and it's also critical to your hobby, which is?
Well, we picked up beekeeping.
You're a beekeeper.
Yeah,
I was not
allegedly.
expecting that when I asked you what you like to do in your free time. You're a beekeeper.
Allegedly, yeah. So we started this last year, actually, and always kind of wanted to do it. You know, I love being outside, like to get outside and hike and travel, and my wife and I were thinking about kind of a new hobby to pick up, and we decided to do some beekeeping.
Just because why not? That would be the first thing anyone would think of for a new hobby. So you're big into, you know, doing everything right and by the book, but you forgot something pretty crucial recently when it came to beekeeping.
Yeah, so at the beginning, you know, I hopped on YouTube to try to figure out how to be a beekeeper, you know, and everybody's approaching these bees and they're, you know, picking them up and
they make them seem like pets.
Well, yeah, like
right.
There's nothing to it. So when we first got the bees, you have to check on the hive to make sure the queen's doing okay. And, you know, we had all the garb, we had the outfit, all the protective stuff, and my wife, obviously, she's a little smarter than me in this circumstance here, and she's all geared up and ready to go, and I'm thinking, I don't need it. So we go out there, and once one gets you,
right,
they all come.
They sense a weakness?
They do.
You're bearing the lead, though. You weren't wearing pants. You just walked out there in shorts?
Shorts, yeah.
You were all decked out, but
well,
you decided to leave the legs.
On.
Right.
Yeah.
Target rich.
Target.
How many times did you get stung?
Oh, I don't even know. It's probably 4 or 5 pretty quick, and then I just kind of bolted across the field. So.
But
I wear protective gear.
Oh wait,
now.
you ran like a cartoon across the field with a cloud of bees?
There's no video, so there's no proof, but yeah, that might have happened.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, where's the honey? Like, you're supposed to bring us honey.
Well, so we're trying. I think we have 2 hives right now. We're going to add 2 more next year.
Okay.
One of the hives has honey. We just haven't pulled the honey
in there
out.
yet?
Yeah, it's part of the plan here. It's
You're
all
going to
part
send
of
your
the
wife
plan.
though instead? She seems to be better equipped to handle this.
Yeah, she's pretty. Yeah, she'll get right after it.
So speaking of, I want to show some other pictures that Dr. Wiley that you shared with us. I don't know if you remember sharing these.
It's been a while.
It's of your farm. Your farm. Do we put it in air quotes? Like, do you dress like that when you're not in your white coat?
Yeah, that's a holiday. Yeah, we do. I dress like that all the time, and I have the pitchfork and the whole thing. Yeah, that's the whole crew there.
Who are we looking at there?
Yeah, so I got my 2 boys on the right. Tom, he's at KU. Henry, he's at St. James. Callie is our oldest one. She's my daughter. She's down at Arkansas. She's the one doing the hoedown thing. And then Cindy's on the left.
Then I'd like to call, Your Honor, I'd like to call for the bougie picture, picture number 3. Now, what is this we're looking at?
Yeah, I didn't
That's not how you
know
dress
you had
on a
hold
farm.
of that one. No, that was our Godfather series. That was a holiday photo a couple years ago, and I found these little velvet coats online and forced my kids to wear them for a holiday photo.
And I like how your one son has his hand resting on top of your head.
Yeah.
That's a show of power right there.
That was a power move.
How do we get on your Christmas card list? We want honey and we want Christmas cards.
Yeah, well, I'll send you Christmas cards. We'll get it out there. Yeah.
Good, because we need more material for the next time.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, thank you, and thank you. And I just want to boast a little bit about the health system, a little bit more, because the University of Kansas Health System has the only program in the whole region that offers complex vascular care. And this also has to do with the heart, from varicose veins to peripheral artery disease. You can get help for all sorts of things. It's all under one roof in one location. Here's Program Director Amy Mahaffey.
It's very unique and it's very rare. What the Center for Advanced Vascular Care does is it provides a bricks and mortar location for multiple specialties to come and collaborate and take the best care for advanced vascular disease. So we have vascular surgeons, interventional cardiologists, interventional radiologists, and vascular medicine physicians that are in one location taking care of just vascular patients. They have an opportunity to collaborate throughout the day about patient plans of care, and the other thing that it allows them to do is to have the patient see the right physician at the right time in the right location.
So in future episodes, we're going to dig much deeper into the Center for Vascular Care, into vascular disease and the connection to your heart, and all the different procedures our doctors are doing right now to help so many people like this man get back to their full lives. And also, I just got a text from our social media team. Nate and Marcia want honey and Christmas cards as well. And they would like a serenade from Dr. Abraham. So you guys are in demand.
Be a duo.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for watching, and thank you to Tammy Batson, who did all the right things, and we're so glad your husband is okay, and we're thrilled that you all joined us